to all of you regarding international subjects and demonstrate our capabilities to follow around the globe, as we already have done in 2020. While COVID is still with us, we hope that our business life will soon return to some normality due to increased vaccination efforts. So we have my colleagues, which you can see here in the picture, Bertha Niesen below here with me, Mark Disselhoff to the left, and Kira Spenot to the lower left, will be with me today and joining me in this education session. We are pleased to present an overview about Germany, its insurance market and coverages available for commercial industrial clients, and lead you through the various agenda items. You can also send us questions, which you will answer after the presentation. You can do that while using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen of the Zoom window. So yeah, please do so after we finish the presentation. So, as we start right now, I actually wanted to, let's do a little quick warm up here with a quick poll, which, I'm kind of very interested to see whether you had already some exposure to Germany. So please, everybody, go ahead and vote. Yeah, there we go. Great. Very interesting. So yeah, my colleagues and myself, we had some kind of bet going and seeing what kind of result will come back. And I am actually personally very surprised as the result, which I can share with you. So yeah, there are two questions, we have asked, as you can see. First question is, have you ever visited Germany? And the surprising answer is 2/3 said no, and 1/3 has visited Germany. I think we thought there would be maybe more than 50% already have done so. So again, if you haven't done so, it's a great country, wonderful, beer gardens, as you can imagine. And it's a great time also to visit Germany if you have a chance and, once you get through COVID, so please do so. So yeah, the second one is, of course, related to our business. Have you ever had to deal with risk exposure in Germany? And that is kind of what we thought would come back. So we have about over 2/3 of you who actually have already placed some sort of business with Germany risk exposure. So yeah, no, that's really great. So sharing the results with you so you can see it yourself. So it's really kind of like a really interesting kind of things. Perfect, great. So yeah, so that's also the perfect time to really start our presentation today. So we have prepared for you a couple of slides, so which you will be able to see on the screen right now. So, and not to waste any more time, we will right away start with the first agenda item, which is an overview of Germany.
Good morning to the Americans. Yes, to get started, some facts on Germany. Germany is located at the heart of Europe with 9 neighboring countries compared, for instance, to Canada, second largest country in the world, only 1 neighboring country. The area sounds pretty big looking at the number, but the area of Germany actually is smaller than the combined area of Ohio, Indiana, and PA. Still, the population of 83 million equals approximately 25% of US population. So as you can see, it's a pretty crowded country here. A lot of activity, economical activity going on in all parts of the country. Therefore, there's a pretty high accumulation of values and insured risks, insured values in literally every part of the country. It's the Federal Republic of Germany, so there are 16 states or provinces. We call them Länder. The biggest city is Berlin, the capital, 3.7 million inhabitants. Second largest city actually is Hamburg. That's where I'm located right now, in the north of Hamburg. Second largest city and largest port in Germany. Actually number 15 globally. Hamburg is connected to the North Sea through the river of Elbe. That's a lifeline of our city. Germany is pretty small, but a quite diverse country. Highest mountain in the south, the Zugspitze, almost 10,000 feet high, and lowlands in the north. Even though it's a crowded country, densely populated, a lot of economic activity going on, still 1/3 of the country is actually forests, and 1/3 of the entire country is used for agricultural reasons. Major markets in Germany. Some of these names might sound familiar, others not, I guess. Interesting enough, 3 of these companies, HDI, R&B, and Gotha, are actually mutual insurance companies. And there's one important group of insurers, that's Sparkassenversicherung und Provinzial. These are government-owned companies, actually owned by the states and the counties. In the history, in some parts of Germany, there used to be mandatory fire insurance for each and every building. And that's the reason why some of these insurers have been actually founded. The oldest one founded here in Hamburg, 1676, still existing today, being part of this major group. That company was actually founded 100 years before 13 colonies in North America declared independence.
Good morning from my end as well. It's good to have everybody, at least to have the possibility to get together on a virtual basis. We've been looking at some facts now, but from our experience in intercultural cooperation, it's also very helpful to consider cultural and practical elements that might have an impact on your cooperation, either with clients in Germany, with German natives that are your contact person at a German-linked business, or even also with us at TRC. So we're starting with the practical things. One is very obvious. We do have a time difference between the Americas and Germany. So when Germans leave the office, the working day in the US is still in full swing. So just to remind you, if information is needed urgently, an update overnight is always very much appreciated by us, since otherwise half a working day in Germany might be lost. On the other hand, you also have the possibility to use this time difference in your favor. So we can always work on something in the morning if you send us something at the end of your business day. Another thing that might be interesting to be looking at is the language barrier. Even though English is the first foreign language to be learned in Germany, often already in elementary school, and therefore approximately around 56% of Germans speak English. Most of them, however, are not always comfortable to speak in a business setting and in technical terminology. So it's not something that is that everybody is feeling very good with. Then in the next step, we're looking at some cultural issues that you might face, other than that Germans don't have any sense of humor, for example. Be aware that this is a generalization, just as Mark said and pointed out, that Germany is very diverse, not only in respect of risks, but also in respect of culture. But yeah, just to give you a brief overview, is something that you might take into consideration is the communication style. So coming back to the language barrier, even if there might be no language barrier because your counterpart in Germany speaks English and speaks English very well, There might be some hiccups due to different communication styles, because Germans tend to be very direct and have a very unmediated communication. So we accept everything at face value. And just to give you an example and to outline what this means is that, for example, a yes is taken as a yes. So a direct no might be more acceptable for Germans than a yes that intends to be a maybe or a probably or a if it works out. On the other hand, we have underlying cultural standards. Culture always provides an orientation and influences the way we perceive and interpret situations and things and actions. And just to give you some ideas at hand that you might encounter when you work with Germans, is that Germany is very task-oriented versus relationship-oriented. So for Germans, there does not seem to be a need to establish a relationship before working together. We're very fact-oriented, and there is a big distinction between person and fact, and that might sometimes, give you the impression that we're very rude. And well, I just say we don't intend to be like that, but that's just the way it works in Germany. On the other hand, we have an appreciation of structures and rules that, compared to the US, where it might be more easygoing and more pragmatic. We're raised with a high faith in structure, and well, rules are the best way to solve a problem for Germans in a lot of ways. It's also perhaps a way to keep control. So a lot of times it might be necessary to put something in writing for Germans. That is the consequence of all these rules and structure orienting. And on the other hand, this also is a good bridge to the next topic that we're talking about, social security system in Germany, because it shows that it's a long-term established system, and it's a high level of security. And well, it shows that there is a lot of faith in the social security structure. So we just pointed out that there are 5 elements of social security system in Germany. It in general applies to employed persons, or under certain circumstances also to self-employed persons or to caregivers and persons receiving benefits. Generally, it's a system that is in place nationwide. It's collectively financed and is compulsory. It's directly deducted from your salary, and the cost is a lot of times, as you can see in the presentation, other than workers' comp, split between employers and employees. These 5 elements, just to give you a brief introduction, I'm just going to point out what we're talking about. For further detailed information, Trust Risk Control will issue a leaflet shortly, which will be available to you, and then you can look at further information in that respect. For health insurance or medical insurance, employees with an annual salary up to 58,000 euros will get their medical insurance by social security providers, and others can choose private insurers with additional benefits. In general, medical insurance includes most medical costs, sickness benefits that would be 6 weeks of full pay and up to 78 weeks of 70% of your salary. Hospital treatment, basic dental care, drugs, as well as maternity benefits. Maternity benefits would be 8 weeks full pay and then up to 3 years of parental leave. Then we have workers' compensation in Germany called Berufsgenossenschaft, just coming back to the language barrier there. That's the equivalent to monopolistic workers' comp schemes in the US. So it's a coverage for work accidents and accidents on the way and from to work and from work, occupational diseases, and it includes prevention, rehabilitation, and financial benefits such as pension and care allowance and survivor's pension. Looking at pension insurance that is in place for all employees and certain groups of self-employed people. We have an old age pension that starts the year you turn 67. We have a pension for diminished work capacity and pension for surviving dependents. The pension itself is based on total individual earnings. It builds up over time. And currently, if you are able to pay into the pension system for 45 years, you will get about 50 to 60% of your last net income. And as of 2021, there will be a basic pension for low income as well. Then we do have unemployment insurance that includes all employed persons and will provide unemployment benefits, career guidance, costs for retraining, short time allowance, and startup company incentives, just to name a few. And then looking at disability, we do have short-term disability through health insurance or medical insurance. And then we have long-term disability to pay expenses for nursing care homes and care at home. If you look at the figures where since when these systems are established, this is the newest one. In a way, the others are well established already. And we're talking here about costs for short-term care, semi or full residential care. This type of cover is often subject to top-up cover. So that would lead to our next topic, that's employee benefits, which my colleague Christian will present to you.
Thank you so much, Berthe. That was very informative. And, you know, like employee benefits, as you can hear from Berthe, is much less a scope in Germany than it is in the United States. The reason for it is that Social Security covers, you know, a lot of the basic items. So there's a couple of subjects I would like to present to you as of today. Would like to share with you. The first one is supplemental health insurance. Supplemental health insurance comes on top of basic health insurance, which is a Social Security package like Jutta already demonstrated. So it's not something which is a market standard. So it's something which is a plus and is something which some employers provide, but I would say the majority does not. So you know, even though there is an increasing demand for it, and you see more employers actually purchasing these coverages, in particular in the middle market business, to provide an incentive for their employees. So yeah, how is it done? It's normally done between the employer and the employee in terms of contributions. There's different ways of really putting that. Like typically the employer pays, you know, like some part of it, and the employee can also pay some part of it. It's really like three items which are the main subjects which are provided. First of all is the access to specialized doctors. So if you're in the event of having a hospitalized stay, you're getting the best, really what we call a chief doctor kind of treatment in Germany. And the other thing is, if you've ever actually spent time in a hospital in Germany, if you're under the basic health insurance, normally you share a room with about 3 persons. So with this health insurance coverage, you will be able to get a private room, and there's a separate area in a hospital for respective, you know, clients who have this kind of coverage, and also for private clients. And the third one is actually the dental coverage, which comes on top, and which is, you know, like a top up to the basic coverage. The next one is an employee benefits coverage, you know, 2 coverages in terms of how you can, you know, can build up assets. So that they're the most popular ones. There's some other ones which exist. The first one is the Riester-Rente. It's intended to provide what we call it like a third column for actually pensioners within the future, to actually provide some assets so you can actually take this apart and top up again your pension. The contribution here is 100% from the employee. And you know, like up to 4% of the payroll tax. So 60 euros, as you can see, is the minimum contribution for it. It gives you also some entitlements for subsidiaries from the government. The government has really tried very hard to establish that, and it has taken definitely some space up already in the marketplace. The second one is a very traditional benefit. It's called Vermögenswirksame Leistung. It's something which exists already for many, many years. It's anchored within the tariff contracts, normally negotiated in Germany between the employers and the unions. So while it's not really fully anchored in the law, it is something which has a long tradition, and most people in Germany really get this. So contribution is 100% from the employer. It's up to 40 euros monthly, and it normally accumulates for 7 years within the categories you see here on the slide. So after 7 years, normally it's 1 year, you leave it to the side, and then the employee has access to it and can actually use the respective funds. Then the other one, which is really, really popular and is a traditional product in Germany, is the group life insurance contract. It's a group life insurance contract with a savings element. So traditionally, like I said, a very, very often used element for, I would say, really replacing more or less the pension systems which have existed in Germany, similar in the US for larger corporations. Also used by middle market companies and even smaller employees. So the contributions are very flexible, could be 100% by employer, could be also the other way around, and something in the hybrid in the middle. So the intent is to really also build up some assets over the time of the working life of an employee, so that by the time the employee comes to the retirement age, he can enjoy the respective assets. Important to know is that it can actually, once the employee leaves, he can actually take this product with him, and it's transferable to his next employer.
And just coming back to Social Security and give a little comparison between Social Security and employee benefits in the US versus Germany. Also to give you an idea what is available through which channel. So if a broker can assist you or your clients in placing coverage or not. So just a brief idea.
Okay, next topic, Nat Cat Risk. Germany is certainly not the country that comes to mind talking about Nat Cat risks. You would think of bush and wildfires in Australia, earthquakes maybe in California. We feel that Nat Cat risks in Europe in general and in Germany particularly are sometimes underestimated abroad. That's why we want to let you participate in some of our thoughts here. As we have said, Germany is a rather small country, but very diverse country. Let's have a look at the map. Might look a bit confusing here. This map shows Germany and also Austria and Switzerland. This is on the earthquake exposure. Certainly there is no earthquake exposure in the lowlands in the north, but as closer as you approach the Alps, there is significant earthquake exposure, and also in the area of Cologne and the Ruhrgebiet, or something like the German Rust Belt, actually. There are earthquakes in southern Germany every now and then. Actually, last two happened last Sunday. And some of those red areas are actually the powerhouses of German economy. It's the area of Dresden and Leipzig, for example. In former Eastern Germany, for example, there's a Porsche plant in Leipzig. Of course, Cologne, that's where Ford and Opel built cars. Stuttgart, yes, the home of Daimler and Mercedes, and they have some plants south of Germany, south of Stuttgart, and in Wörth, actually the largest plant for truck manufacturing in Europe. Those earthquakes we encounter every now and then are small ones in most cases. But every now and then there is a significant one. One happened in 1978. Shown in the picture is Hohenzollern Castle, actually the ancestral home of the German empires. That castle was badly damaged. Historic ceilings with a lot of paintings and carvings came down, statues collapsed, and some of those little towers you can see here actually fell down. It took years to restore that castle, and even visiting it today, you will notice the entire structure is still cracked. Damage 1978 was $880 million in today's value. And as you can see on the picture, this is a densely populated area with a lot of companies located there. This is not too far away from Mercedes' largest plant in Germany, actually. Scientists tell us there will be a big earthquake and it will happen soon. Well, soon, of course, from a geologist's point of view, might take 1,000 years, 2,000 years, but might as well happen tomorrow. This is a picture showing Hamburg in 1962. 1962, the city was struck by the worst storm flood in recent history. The river Elbe is connecting Hamburg to the North Sea, and with high waters in the North Sea and wind blowing from certain directions, we are facing storm floods every now and then. This one was absolutely devastating for numerous reasons. The water level was higher than almost ever before. Some of the dams damaged in World War II had not been repaired until 1962. This storm flood actually flooded 1/6 of the entire city, leaving 315 people dead in the city. It's a permanent struggle for northern parts of Germany to improve preventative measurements. And of course, dams are higher today than they used to be in the 60s. And as this table shows you, water levels are going up. And apparently we are seeing a result of climate change here. And we are constantly struggling to prepare the city for even higher water levels. Storm floods only an issue in the north, but floodings, mainly because of heavy downpour of rain, an issue in all parts of Germany. Table shows some of the worst incidents in recent years. Rather large areas of Germany have been hit. And as I said, a densely populated country, accumulation of risk everywhere. We see more and more floodings in Germany. And again, apparently, it's a result of ongoing climate change. Why do we discuss all these individual perils here? The reason is very simple. All risk policies in Germany are not common at all. Enumerated perils are good local standard here. So you really need to know where's your client located here in Germany and what are the risks, what's the risk exposure actually. Storm, yes, of course an issue in all parts of Europe. Again, probably wind speeds are going up and these massive catastrophic storms happen more frequently than in the past, with sometimes pretty devastating effects, leaving people dead, hundreds of thousands of claims. The maximum wind speed of Cynthia, for example, was 148 miles in the middle of Germany compared to Katrina's landfall speed of 125 miles an hour. Friederike was so powerful that national train service came to almost a complete halt for 2 days. So as you can imagine, economic impact of these events has been significant. Forest and wildfires. Again, what comes to your mind, of course, is Australia, maybe Colorado. We hadn't seen any major events in the past in Central Europe, but there are some recent developments that are quite alarming. Last year, massive fires in Russia, in Scandinavia, in northern France, and also in Poland and Germany. Why does that happen? Rain has changed its characteristics, so to speak. Germany always used to be a rather damp country, a lot of rain here, but we had rainfalls constantly the entire year. Now we are seeing hot and dry weeks, sometimes even months, and after that, massive downpour, causing, for instance, those floods we have discussed earlier. This map shows the wildfire exposure in Germany in 2019, actually in April. Usually a month with lots and lots of rain. This is not July or August, and you can see that Berlin is very close to the most endangered area. This is something to monitor closely, I believe, as this problem, and it turns out to be a problem, will speed up in the future. As you see, Germany is quite divided, looking into Nat Cat Risk. So it is vital to know where is your client's exposure located in Germany. And of course, we will be happy to assist you to ensure tailor-made insurance coverage. And there are TRC partners in every single region of Germany. And of course, they will also be happy to assist and support your client. Thanks. Christian?
Thank you so much, Mark. I think that was very interesting, like for everybody, hopefully getting an idea that Cat Risk also exists in Germany. So we want to finish up with liability. So like the first coverage here we're presenting is what we call the extended products liability coverage. It's a financial loss coverage, not a custom in the US, something very specific to the German marketplace. And the main coverage is rip and tear or removal costs. It's actually like a product which is non-functional, a component normally, who becomes part of a bigger product, like a machinery part or like an automobile in this case, and is dysfunctional. So there is no property damage caused, but again, the product is so-called impaired. So it's the impaired property exclusion you will find in the CG 0001 wordings for the ones of you familiar with the liability conditions in the US, which is actually here covered in the German market for at least, limited fashion. So the two elements of coverage which are covered are really the removal costs, the labor costs, not the product itself, always excluded, but the labor costs for it are actually covered, as well as the transportation to actually bring in like a good functioning product, which will then be actually implemented into the new machinery, altogether product. So it's not a really big component, like in terms of expenses. So it's maybe 1,000 euros, but you gotta have to understand that mostly what's happening is that you have a 40 batch. So if you have a 40 batch of 1,000 products and you multiply this by $1,000 of expenses, so that's actually, or like euros, it's a very, very high number. We're actually in 7-digit numbers here right now when it comes to a claim and a loss. So it's a phenomenal extension, and it's really something, which every kind of component manufacturer has. It's a standard coverage in the German marketplace. There's a second element to it, which is called the mixing and blending damage. I'm not going to go too far on it because this is kind of PD in the US. It's when, so this is kind of, but it's also part of it. But from a US perspective, you would probably consider the PD. Minimum limits for this are 10 million euros, normally for middle market client. It's never be less than 7.5. Underneath this, no broker will actually even, go and actually place this because of errors and omissions, liability, and because it's not a good local standard. Second one we have here is the environmental liability coverage. It's also like a typical coverage for Europe, not only for Germany. It's kind of evolved out of several directives from the 1980s from the European Union. And it really covers 7 different items, enumerated perils, enumerated modules, so to speak, from an environmental perspective. So the specific coverages, the specific laws normally it corresponds to is the Wasserhaushaltsgesetz, Water Resources Act, or the Umwelthaftungsgesetz with Environmental Act. So these are the 2 really leading ones. There's some other laws which also correspond and cause a liability. One thing is very important from an Umwelthaftungsgesetz, it actually is considered strict liability. So that it's actually negligence is not necessary in order to establish liability from like a law perspective. So there's also some mandatory coverages which you will find under this coverage. And it's important that you need like an individual evaluation for each and every risk. It's not something where you can go and go with a blanket coverage to actually provide this to a client. So, and of course, if there is a more high hazard, as you can, make the example of waste water management, that is something where the carriers also will do loss control evaluations. So, yeah. That's so much about the environmental coverage. And then we have excess liability placements, which are very different in Germany than the US. We don't have really umbrella coverages. That's the takeaway from this slide for you. So automobile liability, as you can see on the slide, is something which is covered actually standalone by itself. There's no need for any excess liability because it's actually like covered with very high limits. Traditionally, Germany, as well as other European markets, had even unlimited limits of liability when you go back another 20, 30 years, which is now like kind of capped with 100 million, which is still a very large limit considered from actually a US perspective. Yeah, one thing still employers liability, there's only the element of gross negligence for subrogation covered by it, because again, as a reminder, as Bertus mentioned, we have the monopolistic provider who provides actually workers' comp in Germany. So that's why it's kind of capped. Yeah, last but not least, to finish our presentation as of today, we're coming to like the last actually element, quick snapshot about D&O coverage. In Germany, it's actually also something, we wanted to present to you. I think it's coming up more and more. We're seeing more mergers and acquisitions also in the German marketplace. When there is a change in ownership, then normally what's happening is that normally you have the broad form named insured wording on a D&O policy, which means that any entity which is owned by the first named insured, any named insured, is actually automatically insured. So should the company be sold, obviously from the day upon the closing, there is no longer any coverage. And run-off coverage can be requested for an extended reporting period. It's not automatically done. It's different than the US or in Canada, where you actually normally have this often written into the policy wording. That's not the case in Germany. It has to be negotiated. So in terms of time, in terms of also premium. The second option is the asset deal. So in the respective case, you have like a division maybe broken out of an entity, which then can either be integrated into an existing entity. In this case, normally it's added up to the already existing coverage from the D&O, like element from actually like the new entity who actually purchased this kind of division, or you have to reestablish like a full new entity, incorporate a new entity. Then of course you will have to establish complete new coverage for this entity, not only for D&O, but also for the other lines of business. So yeah, this kind of takes us to the end of our presentation on our slides. So this is actually like good time right now to open it up for questions. I hope like so far you have enjoyed the content of it, and we're kind of like happy to answer any questions you might have. So yeah, just give you maybe a quick moment. You can use the Q&A and see whether anything comes in. All right, I see already one question here. That's an interesting one, and actually, yeah. So the question came up is like, are there any mandatory insurance coverages for commercial insurance industrial clients? So yeah, that's a good question. I think, but would you like to answer that one, please?
Yeah. So if we're looking at mandatory insurances, we do have automobile liability with a minimum of 7.5 million euros limit. And as Christian already pointed out, we do have environmental liability to be mandatory for certain industrial facilities. So that would be a good idea to take a close look at that. And we do have a product liability for drugs, which is also mandatory.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you so much, Birte. Actually, we have a second question here, which I think is a very interesting one. The second question is, do you see a hardening market in Germany, similar to the US? Any particular lines of coverage? Mark, what about you? I think, you've talked about it. Would you like to provide a quick overview? Like, how is the hardening market? What kind of lines of business? Yeah. That would be great.
Certainly. Oh, yes, indeed. We do see hardening markets in Germany, not only in Germany, but all over Europe. All lines of insurance, but cyber and D&O markets are particularly difficult at the moment. Very, very difficult. In some cases, we've been confronted with double premiums. So I guess situation is pretty similar to the United States. Yes, premiums are going up and appetite for exposure of all insurers is going down. And our impression is this situation is even worsening. It's worse today compared to, for example, January 1st renewals.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. That's good. That's very interesting. So yeah, we see something very similar actually here. So yeah, there's a third question I see here, and it says, are you seeing reduction in casualty capacity, both on primary and excess casualty? So same question for property placements. Yeah, I can actually take this very quickly up myself. That's the answer is yes. We're seeing definitely that capacity is decreasing for actually, like I would say in particular, excess casualty. What you normally see, where we didn't really go into it, very often you have sometimes more layers into it. So like I would say when you, in particular when you're looking at a larger client, like an upper middle market client, then you have even larger limits of liability. You have maybe towers sometimes with 200, 250 million, it's not unusual. And we're seeing actually reduction in capacity there. So there's two elements which are impacted. Sometimes the broker can replace like the existing carriers and has enough capacity. So we're seeing like the panel becoming bigger. So instead of maybe 5 panelists providing 250 million, you're going to see like 8 or 10 going forward. And that's the same for property and the same for casualty. So, or, like depending on if it's like a risk where, particularly on the property side, where it has become much tougher in terms of underwriting, we're actually going to see even sometimes really reduction of capacities entirely, so that you cannot really place the same limits of liability. So, yeah, and there's another actually interesting question here, like another one is, are carriers delayed in producing policies more than in the past? I think that's also like a very, very interesting question. So yeah, would like to take this. Maybe Mark from your side?
For me to comment on that, Christian, answer is unfortunately yes. Please keep in mind, Germany is still working under lockdown conditions. Literally everybody is working from home, and that has significantly influenced and slowed down all the working flow and every single process at brokers, but also insurers. Everything, not only issuing policies, but every request, every endorsement, billing, and so on is significantly slowed down. Still working, but we see it is slowed down.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, and here's one more actually I have here, and it's a very active session. Is great actually today. Really appreciate all the questions. Is non-admitted insurance permitted in Germany? Yeah, very good question also. And the answer is in general no. In general no for property and liability. If you have a stationary risk, so to speak, then you really must establish that also the marketplace with domestic coverage in the local place. But as some of you might know, there is the option of freedom of services available. So in other words, within the European community, there is you can actually cover a risk from Belgium into Germany. That's a feasibility, or like from Portugal even. That's all possible. You know, like, so it enables you to do so. Is it advisable for lines of business? I would say for liability or for high frequency risk, no. Property, sometimes it could make sense. And the other issue you have to be actually taken care of are the insurance taxes, because even if you cover a risk out of Belgium, you still have to actually apply the respective taxes, you know, in Germany, which are typically 19% or like 13 plus when it comes to fire insurance tax. So yeah, so great, really, really good session. Really appreciate that. So yeah, like again, you know, this is not the end of our session today. It's the I think, oh, there's actually one more. Okay, we have time for one more. Please, let's do this one. Okay, is Germany a cash before cover country? That's a very good one. Berta, maybe you can answer that question. That would be great.
Yeah, well, in general, it's not cash before cover, so you don't have to pressure too much. But on the other hand, Mark, what are the current payment times that we need to take into consideration right now?
Usually 4 weeks. But well, these 4 weeks start, so to speak, once the invoice has been issued by the insurer, and that in Germany takes longer than in most other countries. No, it is not cash before cover, and the obligation of the client to pay the premium actually is started by receiving the invoice, and that sometimes takes pretty long.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the other thing is, even though there is actually like a law in place, which is called VVG, Versicherungsvertragsgesetz, which actually dictates premium payments. But there's also good practices in the industrial marketplace. And typically the good practice is that the insurer must issue the policy first. So that normally is not triggering normally the premium payment. So, and that's kind of related to the earlier question we have. So if like the policy issuance is delayed, the premium payment is also delayed, but that's kind of in favor of the insured or client in this case. So yeah, very good. I mean, this is great. You know, really appreciate you know, like you taking the time today. And there's going to be like a small survey at the end, you know, of our, you know, like here actually TRC education session. So yeah, please let's not forget about the fact, if you have any other, you know, requests for any other business outside of, you know, like the US, Canada, like a foreign country, we're very happy to assist you and answer any questions you have and be there for you to provide you any assistance we can. Thank you again for participating today. And, you know, we hope to see you soon, hopefully in June. That's kind of what we're planning for our next TRC education session around the world with TRC. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.